1b, so we just finished 1a of addition and subtraction. We're now into 1b, which is your multiplication and your division rules. You will be testing next week. It's a very, very quick unit, okay? The 1a was the longer portion, 1b is a much shorter portion, so you will be testing next week. We're going to cover the multiplication. Really, this should say multiplication and division. So if you could write that below here, multiplication and division rules. This applies to both multiplying and dividing. That if you have a positive and you're multiplying it by a positive, it will equal a positive. Same thing if you have a positive and you're dividing it by a positive, it's going to equal a positive. So this is multiplication or division. If you've got a negative number and you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, it will come out to a positive. So 2 positives will equal a positive, just like normal. 2 negatives, oops, and I should do that in pink, my bad. 2 negatives will come out to a positive. So that's different than addition and subtraction, right? If you added 2 negatives together, it just gave you another negative number. But here with multiplication and division, if you take 2 negatives, it comes out to a positive. It's kind of like the phrase, if I say that I am not standing, then am I standing? If I say I am not standing, am I standing? No. So by saying I am not standing, that's one negative phrase, then your answer came out to no, you're not standing. A single negative answer. But if I say that I am not standing, if I say I am not standing, then that means that I am. Okay? Double negatives negate themselves. When you have double negatives in your phrasing, in your statements, oh, she needs water. Can you get her water? Can you fill her water up? Thank you. If you use double negatives in any kind of statement, when you're writing a paper, double negatives negate themselves and it comes out to a positive phrase. Okay? So here, if I take a positive value, and I multiply it or divide it by a negative value, it comes out to a negative answer. A positive value, when you multiply or divide it by a negative value, it'll come out to a negative answer. And then if you take a negative value and you multiply it by a positive value or divide it by a positive value, it's going to come out to a negative as well. Now, you can also follow the little triangle rule. So this triangle rule indicates that you have a positive up at the top, and then you've got 2 negatives at the bases of your triangle. And that when you are multiplying or dividing, make sure you're paying attention up here, not at the back. If you are multiplying or dividing, you just cover the 2 values that you're multiplying or dividing with. So again, if I say, hey, I'm taking a negative and I'm multiplying or dividing by a negative, so that means negative and negative are being covered. What's the only value that's still showing? A positive. So in my triangle, I have a single positive on the top, 2 negatives on the bottom. I'm covering those 2 negatives to show I'm doing a negative times a negative, and what's left is a positive. Same thing, if I do a negative and I multiply it by a positive, so I'm covering my negative and positive up, what's remaining is a negative. So that triangle kind of helps you. You guys already know positive times positive is a positive. You know that already. It's the application when negatives are involved that you need to understand the rule. Double negatives gives you a positive. A single positive and a single negative will give you a negative. Again, this is only true for multiplication and division. These are separate from your addition and subtraction rules. Okay, so let's take a look here. For problem number 1, we've got -3 times +2. So we have a negative value, and we are going to go ahead and multiply it by a positive value. So when I multiply a negative times a positive, so I'm going to cover up a negative, I'm going to cover up a positive, what type of answer is remaining? Negative. A negative answer is what's remaining. So my final answer for this one is going to come out to a negative answer. And then you just have to worry about 3 times 2. What is 3 times 2? 6. So we know it's going to be a negative, so our answer is negative 6. Again, having that triangle is very useful. It's very helpful. I see it all the time with students just drawing the triangle real fast on their test or on their quiz or on their assignments, on milestones, on their scrap paper. They draw it, and then they utilize that for multiplication and division. Okay, and if you need to put inside of here that this is for multiplication and division only. Multiplication and division only. Okay, now multiplication, as you can see, multiplication can be written with a little multiplication X, or you can have them written side by side with parentheses. That indicates it's a multiplication problem. Or you could have a little dot in between the values, not a decimal dot, but a multiplication dot in between the two numbers. That means it's multiplication. And again, if you need to have a refresher, if you look on the back board at the invisible math board, it is on the middle row all the way to the right in purple. It shows you all the different ways you can write multiplication. You can write your variables side by side. You can put an X in between. You can put a dot in between, or you could put the parentheses there. That invisible math board is always there for you guys to look back at and reference. Okay? All right, so again, this is multiplication. So let's identify. We've got a negative 5 times a negative 4. So I am, again, doing a negative times a negative. A negative times a negative. So that means I'm going to cover up my 2 negatives, and what does that leave remaining? A positive. If I cover up those 2 negatives, it has a positive remaining. So I know my answer is going to be a positive answer. So now I just have to focus on 5 times 4. What is 5 times 4, guys? 20. You need to get those multiplications memorized. That's a skill that you should have had memorized by 3rd grade. Your basic multiplications need to be something that's quick. 5 times 4 is 20, so it's a positive 20. Even though it's negative times negative, it comes out to a positive. Okay, problem number 3. We have negative 20 times negative 6. So again, it's a negative, and we are multiplying it by another negative. What is a negative times a negative? Positive. So we're going to get a positive for our answer. And then 20 times 6, 120. Okay, so we're going to get a positive 120. Again, division is the exact same concept, the exact same idea. 2 negatives will give you a positive. A single negative will give you a negative, but this time you're dividing the values. I want you to do problems 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Indicate whether you're working with negatives or positives and what your answer should be. Should it be a negative or a positive? Okay, let's go ahead and go over this. So here for problem number 4, we have negative 20 divided by negative 5. What did we get? 4. Positive 4, right? Again, you have a negative that's being divided by a negative. A negative divided by a negative is going to come out to a positive. Remember the triangle. Negative divided by negative comes out to that positive that's remaining. So our answer is going to be a positive 4. Okay, problem number 5. This is just a different way of being able to write division. Division can be written with not only your division symbol, but it can be written as a fraction, where you're taking the numerator and dividing it by your denominator. So it's 24 divided by -6. So we have a positive number that we are dividing by a negative number. What is a positive divided by a negative? Negative. Okay, so then we just do 24 divided by 6. 24 divided by 6 comes out to 4, but it's a negative, so it's a -4. Okay, and then same thing for here. We have a negative that is going to be divided by a positive. A negative divided by a positive is going to be what type of value? Negative. Okay, and then 32 divided by 4 is 8, so we get -8. Okay, very simple process. Just make sure you have the understanding of that triangle, how that triangle works, or having this matrix memorized. All right, let's go ahead and go on to the back. Key vocabulary. Vocabulary is important to understand. So when we're talking about multiplication, multiplication's keywords, you're looking for words like multiply, that's an obvious one. Times is another obvious one. Product, that means the answer to a multiplication problem. The words double and twice means you're multiplying by a specific number. What number are we multiplying by if it's double or twice? 2. Okay, then you have the words triple. That means you're multiplying by 3. Okay, area problems tend to focus with multiplication. So if you're finding the area of something, that means you are multiplying. The word by can also mean multiplication. Okay, then we've got our division rules. Quotient, that is a division problem, answer of a division problem. Taking half of something means you're dividing it by what? 2. Taking half means you're dividing it by 2. Obviously, the word divide, if it goes into, if you're creating a ratio, and then terms of equal parts or groupings, splitting it into equal parts or equal groups, that's division. Talking about the different terminologies that we can find within a word problem now. So we're trying to figure out whether we are going to do multiplication or division within these word problems. Here we've got Alana. Alana is going to overdraw $25 in her account every day for 4 days. So how much total is in her account overdrawn by? Okay, so overdrawn. If we overdraw in our account, is that a positive or a negative? Negative. So we know we're dealing with a negative value here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in pink. Above it, I'm going to go ahead and write down that this is going to be a negative number. Now she's going to overdraw $25 every day for 4 days. Every day for 4 days. What operation is that going to be? Multiplication. Every day. She's going to do this every day. That is going to be multiplication. So we're going to go ahead and multiply. And then days. We're talking about days. Can days ever be negative? No, days. Time. Time is always positive. Time is always a positive value. So we're going to put a positive 4 here. So that means I'm going to be taking a negative 25 and I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by a positive 4. So we've got a negative that we are multiplying by a positive. Negative times positives come out to what value? Negative, and it's negative 100. So she's going to be overdrawn by negative $100 by the end of the 4 days. So again, you are identifying the type of value, positive and negative. You are identifying the operation, and then you are working the problem out, finding the solution. Okay, Alex's team lost a total of 54 yards in the first quarter. All nine players on the team lost the same amount. So how much did each player lose? So we have a total loss of 54 yards. Is that positive or negative? Negative, right? Loss. When you lose yards, you're going into the negative. So it's a total loss of 54 yards. That's a negative value. All nine players. So 9 players. Can we have negative people? No. 9 players. That itself, because we're talking about people, that's going to be a positive value. Now, all 9 of them lost the same amount. They lost the same amount. So if we are splitting it into equal parts because they lost the same amount, what operation is that? Division, right? They all lost the same amount. All of them lost the same amount. That's going to be division. So we're going to divide. So then we just take negative 54. We're going to divide it by a positive 9. Negative 54 divided by a positive 9. That's going to come out to negative 6 points. So each player would lose 6 points. Okay, I want you guys to do problems 3, 4, and then on the back, we've got, or on the second page, we've got 5 and 6. Do problems 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own, and we'll go over it and see how you did. Okay, let's go ahead and go over this very quickly. The temperature falls for 3 degrees each hour, so falling 3 degrees would be a negative value. Each hour for 8 hours, again, time is positive. Okay, and the fact that it's falling 3 degrees for the first hour, 3 degrees for the second hour, 3 degrees for the third hour, and so on and so forth, what operation is that going to be? Multiplication, so the term each. That term each is going to imply multiplication. So we are multiplying negative 3 times positive 8, and that's going to come out to negative 24. So it fell a total of 24 degrees after an 8-hour period. Okay, a submarine dives. The term dives is negative. Dives 20 meters each minute for 15 minutes. So again, minutes is positive, and the term each, we just talked about it, the term each means it's going to go ahead and be multiplication. So we're going to multiply. We're going to take negative 20. We're going to multiply it by 15. Negative 20 times 15, and that's going to come out to a negative 300. Negative 300. Okay, our next one. Max. Max lost 24 pounds in an 8-week period on his new weight loss plan. What was his average change in weight per week? Average change in weight per week. Okay, so he lost 24 pounds over a course of 8 weeks. We want to know how much was it for each individual week. So what operation are we doing there? Division. Okay, so what was his average change per week? That means we're going to be dividing. So he lost 24 pounds. Lost 24 means that it's a negative 24. And again, time is always positive. So we're taking negative 24. We're going to divide it by a positive 8. So on average, he lost 3 pounds each week. On average, we can say he lost 3 pounds each week. All right, Keither borrowed $4 a day until he had borrowed a total of $88. How many days did he borrow money? So if you're borrowing money, is that positive or negative? Negative, right? So he borrows $4 every single day until he has a total of $88 borrowed. So how many days did he borrow money? What operation are we going to do? Dividing, right? We're going to divide. How many days did he borrow the money? That's showcasing division. So he had borrowed a total of $88. We know that he borrows $4 every single day. So if we do negative 88 divided by negative 4, it's going to come out to a positive what? 22. Comes out to a positive 22, which makes sense. It's talking about days. It's talking about days. So it should be a positive value. Okay, so that's just breaking down our word problems. Now, fractions to decimals. Just a reminder again that with fractions, when we're converting fractions into decimal form, it's just a division problem. When we convert these fractions into decimal form, it's just a division problem. So if we want to write it out, negative 3 over 5 is negative 3 divided by 5. That's all that this means. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the 3 divided by 5 in parentheses to showcase that the negative isn't necessarily paired to either one of these. The negative is in front. It's not paired to either one. So if I do a negative and then in parentheses, 3 divided by 5. So type in a negative, put in parentheses, 3 divided by 5, and then close your parentheses. Your parentheses are right up here above the 8 and the 9, and you hit enter. You're going to get negative 0.6. Now, when we look at the second example, this is also negative 3/5, except this time they have the negative paired to a number. Which number is the negative paired to? To the 3. So this time I'm going to write negative 3 and then divided by 5. So now in your calculators, type negative 3 divided by 5, no parentheses. What do you get? Do negative 3 divided by 5. You get the same, right? You still get negative 0.6. All right, here we have 3 over negative 5. So now the negative is paired to the 5. So in your calculator, type 3 divided by negative 5. What do you get? The same, negative 0.6. The last one, notice this has double negatives. And what did we learn about double negatives? Double negatives equal what, Ian? A positive number. So if you type negative 3 divided by negative 5, what are you going to get? 0.6. Not a negative. You're going to get a positive. So this is showing that it's different. Right here, because of the fact that you have a double negative, it's going to come out to a positive answer. Versus the first 3, you had a single negative sign. So the answers all came out to negatives. Go ahead and do the next problem off to the right. Show me what the division problem would look like. and what the answer is going to be. Okay, so if we look here, we have 2 over negative 7. 2 over negative 7 means that I'm going to have to do 2 divided by negative 7. 2 divided by negative 7. And that's going to come out to what? Not 28. So if we look, see how it has a 2, 8, and then the 5 behind it. You guys remember your rounding rules. If it's 5 or higher, right, 5 or above, you kind of give it a shove up. You shove it up. 4 and below, you let it go, you leave it alone, right? This is something that you guys started learning in 3rd grade. Some towards the end of 2nd grade, but mainly 3rd grade is where you started learning your divisions, okay? So the 5 tells you to go ahead and round it up to the next number. So this is going to be a negative 0.29. Okay, here we've got the double negatives, right? We've got the double negatives, so we know it's going to wind up coming out to a positive answer. Negative 2 divided by negative 7 comes out to positive 0.29. Here we've got the negative sign in the front, so that means we're going to have a negative, but inside parentheses we're just doing 2 divided by 7. Okay, so that comes out to a negative 0.29. And then the last one, we have the negative assigned to just the numerator. So it's negative 2 divided by a positive 7, negative 0.29. So again, we've got our equivalent ones here, and then these two here. The only one that stands out that's different, the only one that is different is the one that came out to a positive. Okay, if you go to your Google Classroom, in Google Classroom there are 3 IXL skills. 3 IXL skills. Go ahead and get started. Remember, what SMART score do you have to obtain? 70. What's the maximum that you should try for? 80. Don't go higher than 80. That's a waste of your time. Don't go higher than 80. That would be a waste of your time.